The Wasp Factory. Chapter 7. Space Invaders. Part 2. It's been a while. Let's catch up. Just a little drunk on my 3 pints, I cycled back to the island whistling. I always enjoyed my lunchtime chats with Jamie. We sometimes talk when we meet on Saturday nights, but we can't hear when the bands are on. And afterwards, I'm either too drunk to talk, or if I can speak, I'm too drunk to recall much of what I've said. Which, come to think of it, is probably just as well, judging by the way people who are normally quiet, sensible, dissolve into gibbering, rude, opinionated, bombastic idiots once the alcohol molecules in their bloodstream outnumber their neurons or whatever. Luckily, one only notices this if one stays sober oneself. So the solution is as pleasant, at the time at least, as it is obvious. My father was asleep in a deck chair in the front garden when I got back. I left the bike in the shed and watched him from the shed door for a while, poised so that if he happened to wake up, it would look as though I was just in the act of shutting the door. His head was tilted a little to me and his mouth was slightly open. He had dark glasses on, but I could just see through them to his closed eyes. I had to go for a piss, so I didn't watch him for very long. Not that I had any particular reason for watching him. I just liked doing it. It made me feel good to know that I could see him and he couldn't see me, and that I was aware and fully conscious and he wasn't. I went into the house. I had spent Monday, after a cursory check of the poles, making 1 or 2 repairs and improvements to the factory, working through the afternoon until my eyes got sore and my father had to call up to me to come down for dinner. In the evening it rained, so I had stayed in and watched television. I went to bed early. Eric didn't call. After I'd got rid of about half the beer I drank in the Arms, I went to have another look at the factory. I clambered up into the loft, all sunlight and warmth and smelling of old and interesting books. I decided to clear the place up a bit. I sorted out old toys into boxes, got a few rolls of carpet and wallpaper back into their places from where they had fallen, pinned a couple of maps back on the wall onto the sloping wooden underroof, cleared away some of the tools and bits and pieces that I had used to repair the factory, and loaded the various sections of the factory that needed to be loaded. I found some interesting things while I was doing all this. A homemade astrolabe. I don't even know what that is. Astrolabe. I'd carved a box containing the folded flat parts for a scale model of the defense around the Byzantium, the remains of my collection of telegraph pole insulators, and some old jotters from when my father was teaching me French. Leafing through them, I couldn't see any obvious lies. He hadn't taught me to say anything obscene. Instead of, "Excuse me," or "Can you direct me to the railway station, please?" Though I'd have thought the temptation would have been all but irresistible. I completed tidying the loft, sneezing a few times, and as the golden space filled with notes of shining dust. I looked over the refurbished factory again, just because I love looking at it, and tinkering with it, and touching it, and tipping some of its little levers and doors and devices. Finally, I dragged myself away, telling myself that I'd get a chance to use it properly soon enough. I would capture a fresh wasp that afternoon to use the following morning. I wanted another interrogation of the factory before Eric arrived. I wanted more of an idea what was going to happen. It was a little risky, of course, asking it the same question twice, but I thought the exceptional circumstances demanded it, and it was my factory after all. I got the wasp without any difficulty. It more or less walked into the ceremonial jar, which I have always used to hold subjects for the factory. I kept the jar, sealed with the lid with holes in it, and stocked with a few leaves and morsels of orange peel. Standing in the shade of the riverbank while I made a dam there that afternoon. I worked and sweated in the sunlight of late afternoon and early evening while my father did a bit of painting at the back of the house. The wasp felt its way around inside of the jar, antenna waving. Halfway through building the dam, not the best time, I thought it might be amusing to make it an exploder. So I set the overflow going and trotted up the path to the shed for the war bag. I brought it back and sorted out the smallest bomb I could find, wired for electrical detonation. I attached it to the wires from the torch firer by the barred ends poking out of the drilled hole in the back of the metal casing, and wrapped the bomb in a couple of plastic bags. I shoved the bomb backwards into the base of the main dam, leading the wires away and back behind the dam, past the static waters, backed up behind it near where the wasp crawled in its jar. I covered the wires over so that it looked more natural, then went on building the dam. The dam system ended up very big and complicated and included not one but two little villages, one between two of the dams and one downstream from the last one. I had bridges with little roads, a small castle with 4 towers, and 2 road tunnels. Just before tea time, I played out the last of the wire from the torch body and took the wasp jar up to the top of the nearby dune. I could see my father still painting the window surrounds of the lounge. I can just remember the designs he used to have on the front of the house, the face turned towards the sea. They were fading even then, but they were minor classics of tripped out art, as I recall. Great sweeping swirls and mandalas that leaped about the house front like Technicolor tattoos, curving around the windows and arching over the door, a relic from the days when my father was a hippie. They are worn and gone now, erased by the wind and sea and rain and sunlight. Only the vaguest outlines are still discernible now, along with a few freak patches of real color, like peeling skin. I opened the torch fire up, shoved the cylindrical batteries inside, secured them, then clicked the flasher button on top of the torch body. The current flowed in series with the 9-volt pack battery taped to the outside. Down the wires leading from the hole where the bulb used to go and into the casing of the bomb. Somewhere near its center, steel wool glowed dully, then brightly, then started to melt, and the white crystal mixture exploded, tearing the metal, which it took me and a heavy-duty vise a lot of sweat, time, leverage to bend all as though it was paper. Wham! The front of the main dam crashed up and out, and a messy mix of steam and gas, water and sand leaped into the air and fell back spattering. The noise was good and dull, and the tremor I felt through the seat of my pants just before I heard the whomp, single and strong.